Hello, my name is Luna Nguyen, and I am speaking to you today from my country of Vietnam. I want to speak directly to any students or other Americans who are risking your lives and freedom to protest against the genocide of Palestinians which your nation is enabling. I am speaking to you from the perspective of a person whose family was directly victimized by U.S. war crimes. I have relatives who suffer disabilities from Agent Orange. My grandfather was killed by Americans during the Tet Offensive. My mother was severely traumatized by American airplanes bombing her village throughout her childhood. I myself grew up suffering privation because of comprehensive USA enforced embargoes on Vietnam, which made basic foods and medicines scarce in my childhood. I have many videos on this channel going into detail if you want to learn more. But long story short, I know firsthand how much suffering the USA is capable of inflicting on a nation it has targeted with violence, war, and oppression. But I also know that these evils are committed by your government, not by the American working class. Yes, it is true. There are unfortunately many Americans who are brainwashed to believe that Vietnamese deserve to suffer an illegal invasion and the murder of 2 million innocent civilians simply because we are attempting to build a socialist society. Just as there are many Americans who believe Palestinian civilians deserve to be wiped out by Israel. But those aren't the only Americans. During the Vietnam War, thousands of Americans stood up and protested and struggled to try and bring about an end to the war. Today, thousands more are taking up a similar cause to end support of the Israeli atrocities against Palestine. During the Vietnam War, many students even lost their lives fighting to stop their own brutal government from committing more war crimes. Today, we Vietnamese honor the memory of those protesters as heroes and martyrs. They are commemorated in the War Remnants Museum in Ho Chi Minh City, and every student in Vietnam learns about American workers and students who bravely stood up against the American Empire to support our struggle for independence and freedom. The Vietnamese people know that there are millions of good American workers who are willing to take a strong moral stance, able to clearly see what's right and what's wrong. And that legacy continues to this day. Seeing what Israel has been doing to the Palestinians, seeing how the US keeps funding the genocidal regime of Israel, seeing how the US uses its power to bully the whole world into not helping Palestine, it makes my blood boil. And I know it angers many of you in America as well. The US never changed since brutally and illegally invading my country. It is now, as it was then, a brutal fascistic regime, but seeing the American people stand up against this violent regime and speaking out against the genocide gives me hope. I am touched to see how the young generation in the US is now standing up once again to fight for what is right, to fight for the freedom and the right to life of Palestinian people. And I am not alone. I want to read to you the words of some ordinary Vietnamese people which I found on Facebook. I hope that these words give you some encouragement. The students are doing the right thing. You cannot suppress them. Support the Americans who love justice. Support the U.S. students to protest all over the USA. Oppose the violent oppression of the U.S. government against the democratic protests of the U.S. students. Down with capitalism. They are coward to enemies but cruel to their own people. The US bombs and bullets are still killing countless people all over the world. Stop lecturing us about human rights. In the US, even the right to life is not protected. What an irony. Good job, rise up US students. You are clearly doing peaceful protests, but they still suppress you. Their people, especially young people, are democratic, but their government is fascistic. Viet people now support the U.S. students. Don't forget that many U.S. students died protesting against the U.S. invasion of Vietnam. Many students at that time even ran to Canada or Mexico so they could avoid getting drafted to fight the war in Vietnam. This is like the anti-Vietnam War protests happened in the U.S. after the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. The U.S. police is too evil to their own people. Arise, the damned of the earth! Open your eyes and see how people in the US oppose against a fascist government. It is dying like Hitler. How good those students are. They take lots of responsibility. The US leaders always use wars to get rich on the blood and flesh of innocent people. From Vietnam, we are deeply concerned with the human rights and democracy in the US. Hope the US will change. Progressive brothers and sisters, let's build a Lenin statue in your square. There are good people everywhere. When the US invaded Vietnam, the anti-war movement was also very strong. Peace for the whole world, bravo the US students. After the US government arrested all the political prisoners, you can apply for political asylum in Vietnam. Speaking as a victim of US imperialism, my country faces disinformation, slander, and defamation nearly every day from the West, especially from the capitalist media and the US state propaganda outlets like Voice of America. And now I see the exact same thing happening to student protesters in the US. They are dehumanizing you. They are using their propaganda machine to manipulate your public opinion, just as they invented the term Viet Cong to describe Vietnamese freedom fighter in the 60s. They have demonized and vilified us for decades. They vilified and slandered students during the Kent State massacre, for instance, by lying and saying that Kent State students had sniper rifles aimed at National Guard members, a bold-faced lie. And now, today, they are demonizing and vilifying peaceful student supporters of Palestine. What they are doing is not new. In fact, they have been using the same playbook for decades, and we must stay strong to not fall for their lies and propaganda. To all student protesters in the USA, you are doing the right thing. You are a part of history, just like the anti-Vietnam War protesters in the 60s. And what you are doing means a lot to us, especially to the direct victims of the brutal US regime. Keep fighting the good fight, but at the same time, educate yourself and your comrades about US brutality, about the tactics that they are using against us and will use against you. I know we are in a very dark time right now, but we must keep your revolutionary optimism. Revolutionary optimism is not blind optimism. Revolutionary optimism is a concept that was introduced by Ho Chi Minh when he was leading Vietnam to fight against US imperialism. Revolutionary optimism, in short, means you know where you are right now and you know what you want to have in the future, and you will fight with your comrades to the last breath for a better future for oppressed people all around the world. I have written a video on revolutionary optimism over a non-compete. I hope you will give it a watch sometime. There's a link in the description. This is just a start. There will be more brutal and violence against you because that's the only power they have over us. They are afraid of the power of the working class united. The more violence they are to us, the more it shows that they are scared of our strength and our will. Liberating humanity is a multi-generational project. We might not see victory in our lifetime, just like my grandpa, who fought and died without knowing if or when there would ever be peace. But he still fought to his last breath, so his granddaughter and many future generations of Vietnamese could live in peace. And we did it. 60 years after he died, Vietnam won a historical victory against the US, the most powerful empire in the world to this day. Stay strong, keep fighting the good fight. Let me end this video with a quote from Ho Chi Minh in 1966 when he called for our whole nation to stand up and fight against the imperialist USA. The war might last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or even longer. Hanoi and Haiphong might be destroyed. But Vietnamese people will never be afraid. Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom.